traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
A new presidency, new state leaders, and a new legislative session. Utah's top political experts discuss the day's biggest stories. Only on KSL News Radio.
Breaking news from just a short time ago. Special Counsel Jack Smith said he's dropping the federal election subversion case and the mishandled classified documents case against President-elect Trump. Special Counsel Smith is now seeking dismissal on both cases. Welcome to Inside Sources. I'm your host this afternoon, Greg Skordas, along Rusty Cannon. And Rusty, it seems like every time I work with you, we have something that breaks like right before the show starts.
Yeah, we do. It seems like every time we're here, something pops up. So this was, just a couple of hours ago for those that haven't heard so far.
That's right. And just for a brief sort of description, here's ABC's Catherine Falders.
It's important to point out here that the special counsel is not saying that they don't believe that Trump committed these alleged offenses. In fact, they go out of their way to state that in this 6-page filing. They say the prohibition not to charge a sitting president or a president-elect, that prohibition is categorical and does not turn on the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution, which the government stands fully behind.
So she sort of says she doesn't mean it's not saying that he didn't commit the crime or that he did commit the crime. I think it's just the opposite. What he's saying is it was a strong case. We had our case. We're just dismissing it on procedural grounds. And so let me just give you a little backdrop here. These are the two federal cases that the special counsel Jack Smith brought. And the reason we have special counsel is because Trump and his attorneys felt that Biden was just by definition biased and that his Justice Department was conflicted. And so Merrick Garland said, okay, I'm going to stay out of this. I'm going to appoint special counsel. Special counsel is independent of the Justice Department, doesn't work for me, isn't beholden to me in any respect. He appoints Jack Smith, who's had been at that time a career prosecutor, and said, you go investigate these two cases. We're talking about the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case where the FBI found documents that they thought might be classified that Trump should not have had in his possession, allegedly, and the January 6th election interference case based on everything that happened there. So the Justice Department hands off to Jack Smith. He files those two cases. As you know, Rusty, they've been stalled in federal court for a long time. I think that everyone was sort of, at least for the last 6 months, figured there was no reason to pursue them with the election. Yeah. It was too much of a distraction to the election. It was too much a distraction to the country. Let's sit back and see what happens with the election. Now, had the election gone differently, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. There's no way. But with Trump winning the election, the Justice Department is now faced with, what do we do? Can we prosecute a sitting president? And the answer within their department is absolutely not.
Yeah, so he wrote in a 6-page filing, quote, the Justice Department's position is that the Constitution requires that this case be dismissed before the defendant is inaugurated. And then, as she was saying earlier, this outcome is not based on the merits or strength of the case against the defendant, unquote. So along the lines of what you were talking about, they're taking a pretty solid position, it looks like, based on the Constitution and their interpretation of it, that these need to be dropped. And so the two cases, as you mentioned, I'd call the January 6th case. Is that a good summary of it? And then the documents case, which, if you remember, that's when agents essentially raided his Mar-a-Lago home and took the documents then. Boy, that seems like just so long ago. How long ago was that? Was that 2 years ago?
They were both filed within the last 4 years, of course, because they both happened after the election.
Just time's blurring. I can't quite remember, but they're both essentially being dropped now, as you're stating.
Yeah, and ABC News' Catherine Falders also talked about, well, what's next?
Question is, in terms of what's next, what do we see from the special counsel? We know that under special counsel regulations, the special counsel issues a report when their case is closed. So how soon can we see that report? Is it drafted? It has to go through a classification review. That could take weeks.
It actually could probably take months, Rusty. So that's something I hadn't thought about, which is this. Usually when a prosecutor files or dismisses a case, for whatever reason, they're not required to issue a report. But special counsel apparently is. And so what she's saying is, okay, now it's been dismissed. And by the way, it's dismissed without prejudice. Both cases are dismissed without prejudice, meaning they could potentially be refiled. They won't. I mean, I can't imagine under any scenario that they will be. But prejudice is sort of akin to jeopardy. They're two different concepts, but they both mean King's X. You can't refile the case.
Okay.
These cases are dismissed. I'm looking at Jack Smith's language without prejudice, meaning I guess some other administration may take a second look at them.
Okay.
But he's also got to, as what she's talked about here, issue a report, like talk about, well, what was learned here. And I imagine that report is not going to be favorable to who will be President Trump at the time that this report is issued.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that report. What can contain? I just remember the other report that came out from Mueller years ago. What could this report have? I mean, is it a place where he can sort of lay out a case that he wished he could have tried, or does it have to be pretty cut and dry?
So he's already issued in his probable cause statement, which was filed at the time of the indictment. It was an indictment that had, we're indicting you for these crimes in classified documents case, in the January 6th case, because of these facts. So he's already laid out his case.
Okay.
And I don't think that it behooves Jack Smith or the country to go into the details any further than that. I guess we'll see whether he does that. But I think it's important so that the people know, because I'm sure there's half the country that's thinking, wait a minute, how is this fair that somebody who's charged with multiple felonies simply gets off because of their election? So I think that Jack Smith would be better off in his report explaining the logic for why the case is going to be dismissed.
Yeah.
That is, okay, first of all, it's Justice Department policy. We heard the ABC News correspondent say it's in the Constitution. I couldn't tell you where that is. I've never seen that in the Constitution.
I can't either.
But if it's there, it's there.
Yeah.
And I think it's also largely in part because of the Supreme Court decision that came down that granted broad immunity for a sitting president who conducts acts within the course and scope of his presidency.
Yeah, official
acts,
Yeah.
yes. And saying, well, you may not be able to prosecute them anyway. And there was a pending motion, if you recall, in front of the judge on the January 6th case, and she hadn't, this is Judge Tanya Chutkan, who hadn't decided yet whether or not the Justice Department could even pursue the case. There was a pending motion to dismiss, and I think that Jack Smith's thinking, why would we even argue that? I can't prosecute it anyway. Let's let the case die.
Yeah, I remember thinking about, well, after the Supreme Court ruling, it seems to kick it down to lower courts to decide, okay, what is official and what is not.
Right.
And that's going to be the game that would have played out. Obviously, it doesn't look like it will at this point, but
that's something she was asked to decide.
So does she just stop that at this point?
Yeah, there's no reason for her to do anything at this point. And by the way, it's the government's motion to dismiss the case. The judge ultimately decides that, but there's no reason why she wouldn't agree with a stipulated motion that both sides agree to.
Yeah, so now what happens with the two state cases? This doesn't change any of that, right? You still have Georgia, New York. New York was the 34 counts on falsifying business records. That was the hush money trial, as we call it, and then the Georgia case. Well, the Georgia case. That's a whole other story with Fannie Willis down there. But those two cases not affected by this. Those would just actually the New York one, he postponed the sentencing indefinitely on that one. Right.
Right. And I think largely for the same reason. You're right. The Georgia case has been bungled by the prosecutor down there in ways that may be irrecoverable. I mean, she's done everything she can to mess up that case, and it's almost embarrassing what happened there. Nonetheless, the New York case, which we all thought was the weakest case, was the one he was convicted of by the jury. They found him guilty of 34 counts. I need to be careful. He's not technically convicted until you're sentenced in America. But the judge has decided, I'm not going to – the sentencing was actually scheduled for like next week.
Yeah, it was coming up.
Yeah, and the judge said, wait a minute, I'm not going to sentence him. I don't believe there's any chance that President Trump will be sentenced on that case ever during his presidency. What happens after that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it would be. I've never seen a case where a sentencing occurs 4.5 years after a conviction. But we'll see.
You know, it just seems like time passes and so many things change. I don't see that coming back to. But I guess it could. I mean, you think about, even 4 years ago, and what's transpired and those kinds of things. It just seems like that would not be something that resurrects itself. But you never know. I guess, especially in today's world, anything can happen. So
and really, and I know we've only got a few seconds left here. 2 years from now, Trump was under indictment in 4 different jurisdictions for felonies, and we all thought it's the end of it for him.
Yeah, and
but
here
he
we
rose
are.
like a phoenix.
Yeah,
and is going to end up in my opinion, walking away from all 4 cases.
Interesting.
What he can't walk away from is his cabinet selections and the picks that he's made, and we're going to talk about those after the break because some are controversial. We've talked about Matt Gaetz last week. Mm-hmm. Others are still in the hopper, and we're going to decide what's going to happen with those after the break.
The KSL News Radio app will update you on breaking stories.
A house explosion this afternoon.
And you'll get exclusive audio streams from local events, breaking news, and sports.
Cougars feel like they can overcome anything.
All of your favorite KSL hosts are there too, so you can listen anytime. Plus traffic and weather. Download it today. The app for KSL News Radio.
Food brings people together, but many families don't know where their next meal is coming from. In Utah, 317,000 people, many of whom are children, are struggling with food insecurity. And Macy's is continuing the tradition of bringing hope to families in need. You can help provide hope by donating to Macy's Harvest of Hope Drive, now through November 30th. All donations will be donated to a local food bank to serve families in our communities. Purchase an icon for any amount or a prepackaged bag of food with items that food pantries need most at any Macy's store or online at Macys.com. Look for items tagged with the Harvest of Hope icon throughout the store. A portion of sales from those items will also be donated to local food pantries. Together, we can make a difference in our communities and provide hope to families and children facing food insecurity. Visit Macys.com or your local Macy's grocery store to learn more.
Cindy Olsen here for Dave's Bernina's huge Black Friday week sale at their Provo and St. George stores, featuring 1.99% up to 60 months financing on certain models. Burnett sewing machines start at only $249. Buy the Bernina B700E for only $2,999. Save $2,000. The Bernina 735 is discounted and includes thousands of dollars of free accessories while supplies last. How about a free embroidery module if you purchase a B570 QE or B770 QE Plus? Black Friday weekend doorbuster specials, $99 walking feet for the first 10 customers, incredible accessory deals, and a limited supply of Bernina 3, 4, 5, and 7 series machines. Offered at prices too low to mention. Fantastic bargains on trade-in machines and Q20 quilters. Black Friday week at Dave's Bernina, 691 East St. George Boulevard and 2017 North 550 West in Provo. Come see the Bernina 990, the most amazing revolutionary sewing machine in the world.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. So at Consumer Cellular, we're lowering the price for those 50 and up. Now you can get unlimited talk, text, and data for $30 a line when you buy 2. That's just $60 a month for 2 unlimited lines. So if you're 50 and up, make the switch and save. Come on, you've earned this. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com today. Requires 2 lines of service, age validation, and credit approval, subject to system and area limits, taxes, and other fees apply.
Febreze. So my home is also my office, and before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
When it comes to vaping, the truth can get clouded. So let's make it clear. Vaping is not safe for kids, teens, or young adults. It's just not.
Because vaping can put microscopic particles into your lungs.
And dangerous things like metals and volatile organic compounds into your body.
And nicotine, the same highly addictive substance found in regular cigarettes.
Nicotine can harm a person's brain development through their mid-20s.
Affecting learning, memory, attention, and impulse control, and priming the brain for other addictions.
Vaping products also come in kid-friendly flavors that can make them appealing to youth.
And many kids also use other drugs, like marijuana, in vaping devices.
With appealing flavors, high nicotine levels, and lots of promotion on social media,
many kids think vaping is harmless, but it's not.
So talk to your kids about the risks of vaping, because when you talk, they hear you.
For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the Great Salt Lake getting a $3 million boost from the federal government. Second, the special counsel in the election interference case against former President Trump is asked to have that case dismissed. And third, the men's and the women's cross-country teams from BYU won national titles over the weekend. 43 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Your voice, your vote 2024. The Donald Trump administration. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. I am your co-host today with that wonderful patriotic music that is in my ear. Greg
Sounds
Skordas.
great, yes.
They're with me. I'm ready to stand and that's just
salute the flag.
Yeah, that's some good music. It totally took me off my game here, but and I almost came in and said welcome to KSL at night, which we are not anymore. We are Inside Sources here. Thanks for joining us. In this segment, we wanted to talk about, while we were all working away on the weekend watching football or whatever you were doing, President-elect Trump continued to fill out members of his cabinet and announce some more names. So, Greg, let's go through a few of these. It might be news to some of the listeners. Brooke Rollins, she is the CEO of America First Policy Institute. We'll actually talk about that institute. She was announced as the Secretary of Agriculture on Saturday. So she worked in various advisory roles in his first term. And she's from Texas, and she will head up agriculture. I guess that's not a huge surprise. Seems to come from kind of that area. Now, an interesting one also from the same organization, the Center for Education Opportunity at the America First Policy Institute, so same institute. He was chair of one of the sections there. Former NFL player and Texas state lawmaker Scott Turner will be tapped by Trump to be the next HUD secretary.
Okay, so I need to ask you. Talk to us about the America First Policy Institute.
So
because there are others, I think, that were involved with that.
Yeah, and this is a think tank that was, I believe it was set up after Trump's first term, where a lot of former administration officials had been working there since his first term, right? And that's not entirely uncommon, where a lot of alumni from an administration will go, whether it's into think tanks or into certain organizations there in D.C., take their expertise and what they know, and it can be valuable in a lot of places. And so it looks like, at least for these two individuals, they were spending their time there at the America First Policy Institute. Obviously, the name, rings a bell with kind of that Trump circle, Trump world.
Yeah, a lot of these names don't ring much of a bell to me. I mean, you probably have a little more familiarity with some of them. I'm looking at Treasury Secretary, which seems to me to be I think all these are incredibly important positions. Scott Bessent, the founder and CEO of Key Square Capital Management, a hedge fund. I think people have said he's a billionaire head of a hedge fund. I mean, probably has a lot of knowledge that could be very helpful as Treasury Secretary.
Yeah, so I don't believe he himself maybe he is a billionaire at this point, but he worked for quite some time, I think in the 90s and for the last 20, 30 years, oddly enough, for Soros Fund Management. So that would obviously, make people kind of shake in their boots as far as ideologically where he came from. But I think it's sort of water under the bridge, and he's been managing money for quite some time, and then he set up his own hedge fund called Key Square Capital Management. Interestingly enough, I was reading it's had mixed performance for if that's relevant or not, but he actually made some pretty aggressive bets this year on markets and has done quite well this year. But that's water under the bridge, and he would be tapped now to be Treasury Secretary. So he's going to have an important job because a lot of what Trump wants to do is tariff related and makes some market participants nervous. And it looks like Scott Bessent, if I'm saying that right, Bessent, will need to do his job at calming markets and moving on that agenda without upsetting the apple cart.
Yeah, and Trump chose former Oregon Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer as his choice to run the Department of Labor. And I think this is an important consideration. She was backed by the Teamsters Union, at least their president, Sean O'Brien. So I think that if you're going to have somebody represent labor and they're backed by at least the president of this Teamsters Union, that's a good way to think you're going to get approval through the Senate.
Yeah, and note that this is Republicans talking about having the backing of a Teamsters Union president.
Right, yes.
Like this, that is how this world has changed.
Yeah, and I noticed that, just to digress for just a second, how much labor and the unions weren't necessarily jumping on the Democratic bandwagon this year. Not even locally here in Utah. I think the Dems have lost a little bit of that labor support that they've always had, at least in my experience.
Yeah, we all remember it well through the fall. I can't remember if it was in the summer or fall where news broke that the Teamsters polled their members and Trump was, winning that poll 60-40. They declined to endorse in the presidential race, which obviously would have most times in history gone to the Democrat. They refused to do that, and that was a bit of a wake-up call.
Right.
I remember talking about that on the air when that came out. So just sort of an interesting world we live in now where you're talking about both of those things in the same sentence with the Teamsters Union and a Republican nominee to run the Department of Labor.
Yeah.
So hopefully that means maybe smoother sailing in the Department of Labor, but that can be a pretty contentious area.
Speaking of smoother sailing, Matt Gaetz is out. And so when we talked about this last week, Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General and a defense lawyer, she represented Trump in his impeachment trial, is nominated to be his Attorney General. She certainly has, and we sort of vetted her a little bit last week, the background. I mean, she was the Attorney General of the state of Florida for 2 terms, 8 years, and has a fairly distinguished legal career. So that one seems to be another selection that probably will go without a lot of controversy.
Yeah, it seems like she could drive the same narrative at the Department of Justice with like 2% of the drama that would have otherwise come with Matt Gaetz. So that is, I think, a collective sigh of relief for many.
And to you, what do you think?
I'm really glad that it's...
notwithstanding support one way or the other for Gaetz, don't you think that it was going to be a huge distraction to everyone?
Oh, it would have taken all the oxygen out of the room.
Right.
And I think that became apparent. So I think a good decision. I'm surprised how fast it went, but I think it's better for everybody.
He was a nominee for something like 8 days and then stepped out, gave up his Congress seat in Congress. He was just reelected, and he's apparently not going to assume the office in January when he would have been sworn in. So he's taken a step back in a number of ways.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up.
Trump will find a home for him.
Well, yeah, and if not there are plenty of places for him to go where he will do quite well financially and be just fine. So I'm not too worried about him. Then the other ones that are a little more, I think, I don't want to use the term rubber stamp, but they'll get through very easily. Marco Rubio, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a lot of Democrat votes when he's confirmed. He is very popular, seen as just a solid pick there. Then you have Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor, as Interior Secretary. Then you get to the ones that are maybe a little more controversial left, which are Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary. Then you have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for HHS and Tulsi Gabbard for DNI. Those are the ones that I think will draw a lot of the incoming fire at this point. But the list is quite long. I mean, all kinds of things. These are important, but they're just not not headline grabbers that will be coming down. I don't have it in front of me, but there was also a pick. I'll try to find it while we're talking for a budget director that will also be somewhat controversial, but a little bit further down the list as far as detailed information.
You mentioned Robert F. Kennedy, and now that Gaetz is out of the equation, certainly the Senate's going to have some dialogue, some debate with at least one or two of these picks. It seems to me that either Kennedy or Hegseth and Hegseth, the one that was nominated for Defense Secretary, are going to generate a little bit more of the attention of the Senate if they are going to have some contest with respect to some of these nominations. And the Senate majority is so small, Rusty. They have 53-47. At least that looks to be what their majority will be. If you lose 3 senators, if you're Republican, you're in trouble. And those might be nominations that 3 senators might take a close look at.
Yeah, if I were to bet now, I would bet Hegseth makes it through. I don't think he's a problem. This is my personal opinion. I think Tulsi Gabbard, she might have a bit of a rough go just because of her background. I think she'd be great, but just based on her background and what she's done and some of the stances she's taken, some of the things she said, I think there's maybe some sort of biting of nails when they're going through that process. But if I were to make a bet right now, I would say all of these get through, maybe with some back and forth and some noise, but barring any new revelations, I think if they come after any of them, over character, some those types of things that would derail.
You think R.F. Kennedy's it?
I think he's in. Yeah,
Oh.
I don't think. I mean, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I think after the drama of Gaetz gone, I think it would be more. You have a scenario now where Republicans can really lock arms and and just push these through and move on. That would be the smart thing to do, and I hope they do it.
And it's probably smart for the Democrats at some point to say, let's just get moving forward with the country and decide what we're going to do and not fight about some of this.
Yeah, I would hope so. All right, stay with us. More to come on Inside Sources after the break.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour: people who need federal housing vouchers in Utah are often waiting years to get that help. KSL News Radio's Britt Johnson reports.
Brittany Dabb with Salt Lake Housing Authority says they have a 7-year wait list, and they've completely closed it until it becomes shorter. She says the federal funding for the grants is not enough to cover the needs here. Jessica Gutierrez with Weber Housing Authority says their wait list is 4 years.
The housing vouchers are meant to subsidize rent for low-income individuals and families. If they qualify, they pay at least 30% of their income in rent, and the voucher covers the rest. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The Department of Justice has a policy that protects sitting presidents against prosecution. That's why Special Counsel Jack Smith is asking a court to drop the federal criminal cases on the 2020 election and the document cases against President-elect Trump. The New York State case, where he was convicted of falsifying business records, is on hold indefinitely. The Georgia case, accusing him of trying to overturn the election results, also faces an uncertain future. Your money at this moment: the Dow Jones average now up 404 points on the day, while the NASDAQ is up 34 right now. And our KSL weather. We've got clouds moving in, and by the time it's all over, we will have had a snowstorm here in Salt Lake. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Wesley is a truck driver.
I drive a truck, and I love what I do.
A truck driver with IRS troubles.
They told me I owed them $43,000.
It got really bad.
Quite a few letters in the mail. They were talking about wage garnishment, coming after my house, my car. Yeah, they don't play around. I seriously thought that I was going to lose everything.
One sleepless night, Wesley finally made a call to Optima Tax Relief at 2 a.m.
Kind of figured I'd get a machine, but I didn't. I actually got to talk to an actual person in the middle of the night.
He found just what he was looking for.
Oh, they were great people. You need a team of people that know what they're doing. Optima Tax, they know what they're doing.
Optima Tax Relief came through with flying colors.
I saved an incredible amount of money. Happy don't even come close. I was absolutely overjoyed.
Take Wesley's advice.
If you're in any kind of trouble with the IRS, call Optima Tax Relief. Don't trust anybody else.
Call Optima for a free consultation. Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. I'm here to warn you about telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Some of these scammers may say threatening things like you will be arrested if you don't make payments or provide personal information. Do not fall for these tricks. These calls are not from us. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you for information or money. If you receive a call like this, hang up. Never give the caller your personal information, like your Social Security number or bank account, or send money in any form: cash, gift cards, wire transfers, or prepaid debit cards. Report the call to our law enforcement arm, the Office of the Inspector General, at oig.ssa.gov. Share this information with your friends and family.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the big differences, I think, between reading a story online and hearing it from us, Tim, is that, you and I are allowed to share a reaction. We need to be able to say, what in the world were they thinking? So that people listening will know. We feel it too. When we read a story that sounds ridiculous, we're right with you. It sounds ridiculous.
Well, we get caught up, I'm sure just like our listeners do sometimes, in death scrolling on social media.
Yeah.
And fact-checking it on your own is tough. The great thing about tuning in every morning and starting your morning with us on KSL is you can count on the fact that when that information comes out of the radio in your direction, it comes from reliable sources.
It's already been fact-checked.
Right. And that's not always easy when you're getting it online. Finding who wrote it, when was it written, has it been updated with the current facts of the day that change sometimes minute to minute, not just day to day.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Meese.
Nice and quiet on the Valley freeways. We did have an accident called out southbound Bangerter Highway at 4100 South. Not seeing anything just yet in the traffic cameras. Keep an eye out, though. Celebrate the 80th anniversary of America's first Nutcracker at Ballet West, with music performed live by the Ballet West Orchestra. Reserve your seats for this holiday tradition at balletwest.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Partly cloudy today with a high of 47, and we're expecting a substantial storm with rain and snow overnight into tomorrow. The chance of snow continues into Wednesday. Right now, 45 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Your voice, your vote, 2024. The Donald Trump Administration. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
And we're continuing our coverage on Donald Trump, the incoming president. I'm Greg Skordas alongside Rusty Cannon. And Rusty, I hadn't thought about this, I guess, as well as I should have, but when an incoming president starts selecting his cabinet nominees, they don't want to just show up on January 20th, the day after the day after the inauguration, and say, "Hey, I'm here." They want to get involved now. They want to start looking at their future employees, look at what's going on, so that they can hit the ground running. Which requires, and I didn't realize this, that they sign what's called a ethics and transparency agreement with the federal government that seems to make perfect sense. Basically saying this: I'm willing to come in, I'm willing to start looking at the office, but I understand that I'm going to be seeing some things that are confidential, seeing some things that I wouldn't be able to look at until I was officially in that position. I'll sign an agreement not to disclose anything, and I'll come in now. Some haven't signed that yet, right? I don't know whether it's even something that the Trump administration is sort of discouraging, but they haven't been able to start coordinating with their individual offices.
Yeah, so an example, as mentioned in this article by Politico, so some advisors with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., so we talked about him in the last segment, they started reaching out to the Health and Human Services Department, HHS, and wanting to get things started, doing some jump starting before everything comes in January, and they were rebuffed. They couldn't, right? And so that's where the story develops now. As it's being reported, the Trump transition team has yet to sign these agreements that you mentioned, which would make sense that you have an agreement, because if you're coming into a department and let's say you're coming into that department, Greg, you don't have a security clearance, there needs to be some, well, in the case of a security clearance, or just they haven't done a background check on you, those kinds of things, they will need to have some sort of agreement that you will be transparent and that you will follow certain ethical rules, which would make sense. We don't want people coming in that are doing things wrong. Where some people are getting nervous, according to reports, is that the Trump transition team has yet to sign these. Now, they have said adamantly in the same report that they intend to, and negotiations are ongoing. But at this point, that's where things stand, that, hey, we haven't signed the paperwork, and until that, we're all just kind of doing our own thing, and we're not getting together in the same room, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned FBI background checks. Of course, it makes sense that if you're going to take a position like that there be a background check. I mean, I've had FBI call me over the years over people who are applying to be in high-level government jobs, for example, a district court or 10th Circuit Court judge, and FBI will call and say, "Hey, the president has appointed this person. Do you know anything about them that should be a problem?" And, I mean, there is that level of vetting that occurs. You would expect that, and you would also expect that all of these nominees would gladly sign that, because, I mean, I'm just looking at the list, and we talked about them at the last segment. You knew more about them than I did, but people who really don't have anything to hide in terms of an FBI investigation. So you kind of wonder why it is that we're here having this conversation because every day is a day that's lost if you're thinking about moving into a place and having as much knowledge about that agency as possible when you finally hit the ground.
Yeah, my view on this is I don't see as much cause for alarm as many, and at least certainly the author of the article, that this is not the first rodeo for the Trump team, or at least Trump himself, and they've gone through this once. They know, how the cookie crumbles. I can understand why they wouldn't be in a hurry to get this locked down. Maybe they have a lot that they've already figured out and they're doing, because this is for the second time.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone, but I'm saying most of his inner circle and in him, they have been through this before, and they are likely, as the report also fleshes out, is that maybe things are running pretty smoothly down in Mar-a-Lago without federal assistance. That's actually what one Republican close to the transition has said as they asked for comments on this article. They're just not in a rush because they think they're doing just fine as they are now. However, they will get it taken care of, and at the right time, everything gets signed. One issue that could trip up, and I think they'd have to delay it for quite some time, as you mentioned, is FBI checks on the very cabinet members that we were just talking about. Right? They need to get those moving, and if you want to get them up and running quickly, I don't see any reason why the Trump team would want to delay this any further at this point.
Yeah, and we're talking about a trio of ethics and transparency agreements with the federal government. Without these agreements in place, Rusty, Trump's team can't access any non-public government data, depriving it of a full view of efforts the White House and federal agencies are taking now to safeguard against the range of threats. That includes classified elements of the administration's involvement in conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, and details of high-level conversations with allies. So, yeah, I mean, I agree it's a little early to sort of throw up we've got problems here, but you would expect that this will be resolved here sometime between now and Christmas, or maybe even sooner, so that these appointees can know as much as possible about what they're walking into.
Yeah, so Trump's spokesperson Brian Hughes actually said this. He said, quote, our lawyers continue to constructively engage with the Biden-Harris administration lawyers regarding all agreements contemplated by the Presidential Transition Act. But then he declined to say the reasons for the holdup and what they need to continue to hash out, or when they expect to reach an accord. But I think everybody, at least according to this article, they remain hopeful that this will get worked out soon. But again, I go back to the idea that this doesn't surprise me. If this is your second time at it, I think you probably have a lot of your ducks in a row and know what landmines not to step on, and you just maybe don't need as much help. And they would surely get this in place when they need it.
As you might expect, some Senate Democrats are suggesting to Politico that the lack of FBI background checks could prevent these nominees from securing confirmation, saying, look, how do we have our confirmation hearings if we haven't even had the basic federal background check? So they're already sort of throwing out their concerns early on, saying, hey, this is a pretty straightforward thing. Just sign the agreement, go through the background check. This could all go pretty smoothly in November or in January. But if you don't, and we don't have that information, we may not be able to have a confirmation hearing.
Yeah, the interesting thing that this has me thinking about is what would it be like to be those that have to coordinate all of this, sort of in the upper tier of a transition team, whether it's President Trump or Biden or anybody, of the incoming calls and texts that you're getting from all those that want a position of, especially a high-profile one or even maybe a mid-tier one, just the thousands of incoming rounds that you're taking as far as requests of, hey, I would love to do this, or my friend would love to do that, and or how this all happens, I literally have no idea other than watching it unfold previously a few times from far away. But I can only imagine just the chaos that ensues as far as not only taking all those requests, but managing the political winds, right, of jockeying, if you see it, back and forth and all. So I maybe that's part of the delay, that there's just a lot going on to where they're focused on getting all those ducks in a row before they kind of sign paperwork and get moving.
So here's another thing that concerns me a little bit. Is this a person-by-person decision? Seemingly not, because none of them have signed it. You would think a couple of them would say, hey, let's get rolling here.
Yeah.
I wonder if the Trump administration has said, look, let's stand off here. Let's not sign these until we figure out what we're doing. I mean, you know what I mean? There may be something more than just a concern among some of the individuals to have their background checks taken. The administration saying, this is something we're going to hold off on as a group. I mean, do you think there's anything to that?
Yeah, that's what I think you're getting to what I'm thinking. That is, this is their second time at the rodeo. I think likely they're getting all their ducks in a row. They learned some valuable lessons last time and got tripped up. Maybe they're going to get it exactly right and then go all at once.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember, if you miss out on any of our shows or you love a particular segment so much you want to hear it again, like the one we just did, you can find our full shows and individual segments posted online after each show. You can find us on kslpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. When we come back after the break, Rusty, we're going to go west to the Great Salt Lake and find out what's going on there with the water. And it seems like it's something we're concerned about all the time. We're going to have a guest with us. Stay with us.
You know what? I think the holidays are the worst time of year for your furnace to go out. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and every November it feels like people get extra stressed when faced with the need to replace their furnace. The money they've been saving is supposed to go to Christmas, and now they're faced with a choice: Christmas or comfort. This holiday season, Any Hour Services wants to help alleviate some of that stress with our special holiday financing. No money down and no payments until next year. Plus, if you schedule a free estimate before the end of November, Any Hour Services will give you $2,500 off any full system you buy. And that doesn't even factor in the rebates and incentives you might qualify for. Again, during the month of November, Any Hour Services will give you $2,500 off any furnace and air conditioner you buy. And you can take advantage of our special holiday financing with no money down and no payments until next year. For more details, call Any Hour Services and schedule a free estimate. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
Open the doors to gift-giving magic at This Is the Place Heritage Park. Start checking off your list because they've got just the thing for everyone on your Christmas list. You'll find everything from curated collections to home goods, toys, and specialty international brands only at the gift shop at Heritage Park. The gift shop at Heritage Park is your one-stop shop for giving holidays and all year round. Parking is always free, and their service is priceless. Located at 2601 East Sunnyside Avenue, Salt Lake City, right at the top of the hill on the plaza by the big monument. The gift shop is open 7 days a week. Then, don't forget holiday events all season long, including Candlelight Christmas, starting up December 10th through December 23rd, except Sundays. For information finding the perfect gift, visit thisistheplace.org. Now's the time, and this is your place for gifts, traditions, and holiday fun.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit npsstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. npsstore.com.
It's official. KSL Sports is your official radio home of the Utah Hockey Club. When the puck hits the ice this fall, you'll hear every goal, every check, and every tension-filled moment on the KSL Sports Zone. Plus, let your voice be heard on the Utah Hockey Club Fan Forum on KSLSports.com, your exclusive home of the NHL and the Utah Hockey Club in Utah is KSL Sports and 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with human kindness is here. Hello, human kindness.
Let me ask you a question. You have a best friend? How big would it shock you if somebody told you that your best friend just killed somebody?
911, what's your emergency? Someone on the other line said they kidnapped my son, and they're demanding $500,000.
On September 12th, 1995, 12-year-old McKay Everett disappeared from his home in Conroe, Texas. It was a crime that shocked the community because the suspect was so unlikely, so unexpected.
former high-ranking police official. He'd run for sheriff at one point.
Law enforcement personnel were pretty much split down the middle over whether or not he actually did this.
And to this day, McKay's mother, Paulette, still feels that justice was never truly served.
I've asked myself so many times, what in the world happened?
Ransom is available now. Listen at ransompodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, people who qualify for federal housing assistance vouchers in Utah often have to wait years before they actually get that help. Second, the criminal cases brought by special counsel Jack Smith against former President Trump will be dismissed. Third, ski patrollers at Park City Mountain Resort were walking the picket lines today. 45 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. I'm your co-host, Rusty Cannon, here with Greg Skordas. Greg, as you mentioned, we're going to shift to the home front here and talk about the Great Salt Lake. So this is going to be really interesting. We have with us Tim Davis. He is the Great Salt Lake Deputy Commissioner, talking about the lake today. Tim, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
So there was some news that we read about. Great Salt Lake Research receives a $3 million boost. Tell us what is going on out there with this $3 million.
So the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation received $3 million for Great Salt Lake Research for gathering data, water data, and they partnered with the U.S. Geological Survey to add 13 new stream gauges around the Great Salt Lake, to develop models to better understand the salinity levels in the lake, which really control the ecosystem and how healthy it is in the south arm of the lake. And today we went out and we saw the first of those stream gauges go in. And it's important because if we don't know how much water is going into the lake, if we don't know if people are conserving water and dedicating it to the lake, if we don't know if it's getting there, then we can't manage the lake and make sure that we get it back to a healthy range.
Tim, it seems like a couple of years ago we were at some pretty dire situation as it regarded the lake, and then we had a big snow year 2 years ago. We had a fairly big snow year last year. I don't know if people have gotten complacent or sort of feeling. I mean, I remember at least in my neighborhood, you couldn't water your lawn 2 years ago, and now people are sort of watering. But what are the levels today? Not the exact numbers, but how are we sitting today as we have been historically? Are we high, low, average? Sort of where do you think we are right now?
Greg, we are at just about the exact same level that the lake, the north arm and south arm elevations of the lake were in January 2021. And as you indicated, the lake fell to its lowest recorded level in 2022. So we're about a year away from where we were 3 years ago. So it's a...
so are you saying we have not gotten back to the level, or we
went up and then we came back down?
Okay, got it. Okay, so it's not that much better than where we were a few years ago.
No, we're still 4 feet above or 3.5 feet above the lowest recorded level ever, but we went up a total of, over those 2 good water years, we went up 6.5 feet, and we've now come back down. So yeah, we're down 3 more feet from
okay,
that
got
peak.
it. I see what you mean.
And the lake usually rises and falls on average 2.5 feet, but during the most recent drought, it would fall 2.5 feet each year and only come up 1. So we were on this kind of precipitous decrease of lake levels, which impacted the ecosystem, which impacts the economy, which impacts our communities.
So there's been a lot of legislation over the last couple of years, well, I'm losing track of time, maybe 3 years, to put some money at this problem. Mm-hmm. Is there any result of that at this point, as far as what we've learned, what we've been able to put in place? You've talked about these monitors. Like, what has changed as far as what that money has done?
So in 2022, when the lake fell to its lowest recorded level ever, the legislature jumped into action. They were already starting to make some changes to water law in Utah to make it so that it was no longer illegal to donate water to the lake, so that we could make investments in helping people conserve, dedicate, and deliver water to the lake. So the difference from where we are today versus 2021, where the lake was at the same level, our office was created, the Office of the Great Salt Lake Commissioner. Our job is to coordinate all the different state, federal, local agencies, make sure we're all pulling in the same direction for the lake. There's been an investment of hundreds of millions of dollars in water conservation, and there are new tools. So if the lake were to fall back to where it was in 2022, we have some emergency tools that we could close the breach between the north arm and south arm of the lake. That helps save the lake in 2023.
So talk to our listeners a little bit, Tim, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I really appreciate you being here, but the legislature can't do much about Mother Nature. We can't do much about rainfall, and we know that we're still in a drought. I mean, let's face it. But other things are happening to make up for that. I mean, it sounds like there have been some conservation measures. There's been some groups that have donated water that we didn't have previously. Is that what we're talking about in ways of conserving or at least maintaining a certain level?
Yeah, so we're coming out. So the Commissioner's Office is coming out with a detailed plan for what are the steps major levers we need to pull to get the lake back to a healthy level. The first one is increased baseline inflows to the lake from conservation. And we've done a lot of work across the Great Salt Lake Basin to conserve water. Where we haven't done enough work, and we're doing this now, is to get that conserved water that you're no longer watering your lawn all the time, or you've gotten rid of your parking strip. So now that you multiply that by 1,000 people in your town, you have that conserved water. Now we need to dedicate it and deliver it to the lake. And that's where this new investment in stream gauges and data will help us measure. When water's dedicated to the lake, we can work with the state engineer's office and make sure that that's shepherded to the lake. So that's one of the key things that everybody in Utah, everybody in the Great Salt Lake Basin needs to be doing, is conserving, dedicating, and delivering water to the lake. And that's really where we're focused right now. That's where we can control the impacts on the lake. We can't control Mother Nature, but we can control how much water we use and whether we dedicate and deliver saved water to the lake.
So is there infrastructure in place to get that water to the lake, or do we still have to put in – I mean, is it just a matter of time passing and getting the water there, or is there more build-out that has to be created to get the water to the lake like you're talking about?
Largely, we have the infrastructure to be able to deliver water to the lake from our reservoirs if that's where the water is being dedicated from. But what we haven't had is the infrastructure to measure that water making its way through the system and to the lake. That's what the new investments are helping us do.
What's the logic, Tim, and I know this is a little bit off topic, between the different water levels and salinity levels between the north and south arms? Right. I mean, certainly that's regulated for some reason.
So the north arm, no, it was just the Union Pacific built a causeway across the Great Salt Lake, cut it in half, and the north arm has think of the ocean. Ocean's about 3.5% salinity. The south arm of the lake, where all the ecological health is, where we have brine flies and brine shrimp and 10 to 12 million birds, that's at about 12%. So then you go to the north arm and it's 25%. And that's just because we cut the lake in half, and there's all the fresh water comes into the south arm of the lake, not the north arm. The only way that water goes to the north arm
is breach it.
Is a breach in the causeway.
Right.
So yeah, there's no ecological life other than what are called halophiles, the salt-loving bacteria that live in that north arm, and they turn it into a color like pink lemonade once every year.
25% salinity isn't a good living environment.
It's not.
I take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds uncomfortable.
Yeah.
As far as taking a nice bath in it does not sound good.
No, I don't know anybody who bathes up there, but I know in other places like the Dead Sea people go into it, but that's not. I don't know anybody that's gone into the 25% salinity of the north arm and willingly.
Okay, so let me ask you, as far as the winters go, they seem to be obviously a big contributor. We had a great winter 2 years ago, decent winter last year.
Right.
How many of those would it take to really just get us out of the woods on this?
So I think those 2 winters ago, that was a record-breaking year. We also closed the breach between the north arm and south arm. The lake came up 5.5 feet that year. So if you use that calculation, and if we were to hold most of the water that comes into the south arm, we could get back to where we need to be in maybe 3-4 years. The hard part about that is we need to keep both arms of the lake, and by state policy, we're required to manage the whole lake as not just one arm, north arm and south arm, but we have to maintain the entire lake. So I would say, and I hope this is the case, we get a 4 or 5 great years, and we can get the lake back to a healthy level. and then we can work on our long-term plans just to make sure that we're balancing and sustaining the amount of water that we use, so we're not lowering the levels of the lake again in the future.
Well, Greg, we're both skiers. I think we can live with 3 or 4 years of great powder.
Yeah, right.
And we'll call it good, right? You won't find any complaining from us. Well, Tim, thank you for joining us today. It was really helpful. Great to get that update, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for caring about the lake.
You bet. All right, in the second hour on Inside Sources, we're going to dive into ballot security. A county in Idaho says it will publish all the ballots it received and counted during the election earlier this month. Is this a good idea? We're going to get into it next.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Park City Mountain Resort opened this weekend, but skiers are met with ski patrollers on the picket line at Vail Resorts, which now owns the Park City Resort. The union representing the patrollers wants more base pay and increases for experienced patrollers. Vail offered a proposal that was less than a 0.5% increase. Picket lines were supported by people honking their car horns, as well as firefighters and ski patrol from other resorts. A statement from the Park City Mountain Resort claims wages are competitive and outpacing the rate of wage inflation. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The White House Christmas tree arrived today on a carriage pulled by Clydesdales. First Lady Jill Biden welcomed the huge Fraser fir. It comes from a farm in North Carolina. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average is up 439 points on the day. The NASDAQ up 51 right now. And our KSL weather looks like we've got a storm moving in for tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
It is always a great day when the Western Nut Company catalog arrives in our mailbox. After all, they have been a holiday giving tradition since 1966. Just wouldn't be the holiday season without the Western Nut Company. And as you peruse the catalog, there are so many wonderful gift-giving ideas. My wife, whose family is back in Missouri, she always goes into the Western Nut Company and makes sure that things are delivered right to their door, and it is a favorite. They're a big hit back in Missouri, too. Wherever you have special people that you want to give the perfect gift to, you go to the Western Nut Company, and they take care of it all. Delicious, freshly roasted nuts. Look for the kiosks that are popping up, and of course, you can drop by the factory store at 434 South on 3rd West. The look and the feel, the smells and the tastes of the season await you at Western Nut.
If you have unfiled taxes or in debt to the IRS, this is important news. Did you know the IRS has programs specifically designed to help people struggling with tax debt? Powerful tax assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution firm, A-rated by the Better Business Bureau. Their award-winning team of tax attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $1 billion of tax debt for their clients. One call to Optima can start the process, helping to end your worries about wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other IRS actions. Make sure you're getting the best options to solve your tax problems. Call the experts at Optima today for a free confidential consultation.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Jazz games are better together. Host an unforgettable night at Delta Center with colleagues, friends, families, whoever. Group tickets are the best way to get everyone together to cheer on the Jazz. Pick from a variety of options for seating, dining, and game day experiences. Start planning your big night at the game by calling 801-355-DUNK, emailing group sales at utahjazz.com, or simply visiting utahjazz.com.
For more and more Utahns, the golden years now include golden gigs.
I like playing, but I want to do something that's meaningful.
KSL's Daniel Woodruff reveals why Utah leads the way when it comes to senior side gigs. An unaffordable Utah report, tonight at 10.
Feeling frustrated? Ignored? Deceived? It's time to get Gephardt. Get Gephardt. Weeknights at 10 on KSL.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Meese.
Well, for those who are traveling Bangerter Highway, the earlier crash called out at 4100 south southbound was updated to 5400 south. Just past that, it was over to the right shoulder, and it's in the clearing stages. We also have a crash in Taylorsville. Southbound I-215's westbound 4700 south on the shoulder. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It'll be partly cloudy today with a high of 47. We're expecting a substantial storm with rain and snow overnight into tomorrow. The chance of snow continues into Wednesday. Right now, 45 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
A new presidency, new state leaders, and a new legislative session. Utah's top political experts discuss the day's biggest stories. Only on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to the second hour of Inside Sources alongside Rusty Cannon. I'm your host this afternoon, Greg Skordas. And Rusty, how do you make it your election results transparent? Well, up in Ada County, Idaho, they're going to publish 270,000 ballots online. 270,000 ballots from the November 5th, 2024 election are going to be published online. The county clerk says it's a big step in strengthening trust in elections by making them the most transparent they've ever been. I mean, you and I looked at that at the beginning, and we're kind of like,
we scratched our heads.
Wait a minute.
We thought this does not sound like a good idea, but explain.
Yeah, the Ada County Public Information Officer, Nicola Camarada, talked with Dave and Debbie this morning about why the county is doing this.
You know, after the 2020 election, I think it was heard kind of across the country of just people, you know, having questions, and just, you know, we saw an influx of public records requests in our office. And so the Ada County Clerk, Trent Triple, and the Elections Director, Saul Seiler, really wanted to get the information back to the people in an interactive way. And that's how the ballot verifier was made. It was about a 2-year project. And it does, exactly what it's supposed to do is really just open another eye into our elections process and the ballot images themselves for people to see right from the comfort of their own home.
So as she mentioned, this tool, Greg, the ballot verifier tool, the more I read about it, the more interested I am in where this makes sense.
And the less problematic it seems, the more we've been talking about it. We've been talking about it since well before the show started tonight.
Yeah.
To just think of, whoa, can you really do this? But
yeah. It allows anyone to audit the ballots by precinct or race while maintaining voter anonymity. So to quell any concerns, this doesn't contain your name or your address or anything. It's just
any identifying.
No, any identifying.
Really.
And it just has the ballot, right? The portion where it was filled out of what candidates. And so you have anybody could just go to town on doing any kind of audit they wanted. This is all online. Over 270,000 ballots. Hey, Greg, go knock yourself out. Have fun with Excel this afternoon, and just doing all kinds of auditing that they want. And I think this is brilliant. The more that I look at it is, okay, you want to make sure you trust us. Here is all of the ballots. Go ahead and count them yourself. And I'm being flippant there, but It has all the data to where you could examine it, parse it. You could do it by precinct or race, however you want to do it, and you would be able to see, oh, okay, well, yeah, just like they reported there were, I'm using some random number, 56,024 ballots in this race. I count the same number. I actually can see every single one of the ballots, the image of those ballots. It's, I think this is bordering on brilliant. Yeah.
And don't you think, just from a strategic standpoint, I mean, it's open to everybody, but the various parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, can look and say, look, in this particular part of the state, Kamala Harris did really well. Our other candidates didn't do particularly well, but this candidate down here did well. I mean, you can break it down by every single race and say who's going which direction. I think it could be really helpful. But most importantly is the transparency.
Yeah.
I mean, people thinking the elections are fraud, they're not accurate, we're not getting correct results. The people that are counting the ballots are not being straight up. Let's just show them the ballots. Here you go. Anybody has a question about how people voted in Ada County, which, by the way, is the largest county by population in Idaho. It's the county where Boise sits. I mean, it's the county, by far the biggest county. That's a lot of votes. That's a lot of people, and that takes a lot of guts to open that up. I was thinking there has to be some level of law or constitutional problem with it, but as long as it's secret, as long as they're still confidential and there's no way to trace the ballot to an individual voter, I don't see that there could be a problem.
Yeah. It's interesting, some of the background on this. A person named Tim O'Donnell, he lives in the Boise area. He had a background in software development, and after the 2020 election and all that went on, he wanted to look into this. And so he started gathering information and networking with a lot of people, conspiracy theories here and there, but he was eager to sort of get behind the scenes. So he filed a records request and arranged to take a tour of the Ada County Elections Office to understand more about how it went. He was asking the officials all kinds of questions, and he came to learn, as he reports, that with so many eyes on the process, it would really be difficult for anyone to cheat at any significant scale. So he said, well, if we want to be transparent, why not we just give all this data out, right, or all of these imagings out? And that's where they started testifying this ballot verifier tool that they had been quietly developing, and it sounds like they're going to roll it out now, and they are about to publish all the ballots that were just cast, at least in this county here a few weeks ago.
Weber County Clerk and Auditor Ricky Hatch, who we've had on our show a number of times, and I think you know him well, spoke with KSL News Radio earlier about the challenges that Utah might have in publishing their ballots online.
Our state constitution guarantees a right to a secret ballot. And we don't have voters' names on the ballot, but we do have their precinct number. Precincts in Utah generally have about 1,000 voters in them. But there are some precincts, because of how boundary lines are drawn, some precincts have 2 voters or 5 or, a really small number. And if we posted those, even though they don't have the voter's name, let's just say it's a precinct that has 1 household in it and everybody votes for the same candidates, now their right to a secret ballot has been compromised.
I see his point. I'm actually aware I have some family that are in a precinct just like that where I literally think it's like 8 households in the precinct, right? And so that would be problematic, where let's just call it precinct 10, or I don't even know what the number is, it gets reported and you can see how the people voted. Well, what 8 people live in that precinct. Right. Their privacy's gone. But maybe there's a way, and it'd be interesting to talk to Ricky about this, maybe there's a way to get this done to, I don't know, aggregate that type of data, but it is a problem that would exist in Utah with these small precincts, to where you'd be giving away the privacy of those in a small precinct. A precinct like you and I live in, I'm sure we have tons. We'd have that wouldn't be an issue, but he makes a decent point.
Yeah, and he points to Utah Constitution that guarantees the confidentiality of your ballot. Yeah. Idaho's Constitution does the same thing.
Yeah.
So it would seem to me that maybe in 2024 Utah couldn't do this, but is it important to print the precinct on the ballot? I mean, I think there's a way around it so that it's not really an identifier, but at least it sort of brings the pool of who the voter might be into a smaller group. You know what I mean? I don't know I think you could still do that in Utah and just not include that particular information.
Yeah, and if there is imaging in this, and I believe there's imaging in this, right, where you have the image of the ballot, so you can verify that if that precinct is listed in where that image is, well, maybe move where that's listed.
Right.
So it's not in the image or something like that. But this is interesting. A software company out of Massachusetts, Cyvera, they're the ones developing this ballot verifier program, according to reports. It's managed election data for Idaho and other state and local governments. Tarrant County, Texas, joined Ada County in using this system for this year's election. And apparently many other state and county officials around the country, both Republican and Democrat, have signed on recently, or at least shown interest in adopting the program. And so this is this could be something that gains some momentum. And boy, wouldn't we love to have something like this to put all of these concerns to rest.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think county clerks would welcome something like this. I guess my concern, again, is, and maybe they're already doing this, do they scan every ballot? I mean, is there a way that, does this create a different level of work for county clerks to go through and actually scan and publish all of these? Or is that something that's done already? The scanning part, I mean.
I would, that's a good question. We should ask, but I think it's already done as far as I know. I believe imaging is part of the process, but I think this would go such a long way especially in today's world when data is so ubiquitous and we can do this kind of software development to where, hey, if you want to audit the election, go ahead, knock yourself out. Here's 1 million ballots and all the data. It's free online. Go for it.
Right. Interesting. When we come back after the break, Reuters News broke a story about Donald Trump's potential energy plans. Maybe not too much of a surprise, but let's take a deeper look at what some of those plans could include. We'll talk about that after the break.
The KSL News Radio app will update you on breaking stories.
A house explosion this afternoon.
And you'll get exclusive audio streams from local events, breaking news, and sports.
Cougars feel like they can overcome anything.
All of your favorite KSL hosts are there too, so you can listen anytime. Plus traffic and weather. Download it today. The app for KSL News Radio.
At Common Spirit Health, we know that lifelong health and well-being starts with primary care. So we have doctors and providers who see you, hear you, know you, and understand you. Because understanding you means understanding your needs. And that leads to a deeper knowledge of the prevention, wellness, and treatment options that may be best for you. It's primary care that treats your whole family like family. It's primary care with human kindness. Discover all the ways you can find and connect with a primary care provider at mountain.commonspirit.org.
Old Spice Swagger Holiday Pack, perfect for a gift to treat yourself. 24/7 holiday freshness with daily use can smell your bestest. I'm gonna be smelling great all season. Old Spice scents just can't be beaten. Chock full of value, saving that green. Got the essentials needed to feel clean. Deodorant, hair, body wash, and spray. Celebrate your holiday the Old Spice way. Ho 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 ho.
Febreze. So my home is also my office, and before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Matthew.
Huh? Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I just need you to listen to me.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me. And believe it or not, they really do make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for talking and preparing me for what's ahead.
Thanks, Mom, for never giving up and always being my biggest fan.
Thank you for letting me know what you expect, so I can try to meet your expectations.
Thank you for talking.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
How does a soccer club born in an unlikely place,
Utah? You sure you want to do that in Utah?
built with players no one else wanted,
We knew no one believed in us.
reach the league's highest heights?
We finally did it. It was like just this feeling of getting to the top of the mountain.
Russell has made a champion out of Real Salt Lake. How does that same team find a way to shatter expectations in the midst of a fight for its own survival?
Our club is burning to the ground as we speak.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and in a new podcast, Making of a Moment, the RSL story, we take a closer look at one of those iconic sports moments.
Soccer is a crazy game, and we saw it firsthand tonight.
And unravel how knowing the truth of these moments can transform what they mean.
I just kind of got chills right now thinking about it.
Making of a Moment, the RSL story, is available now. Follow us at makingamomentpod.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
My name is Tom.
My name is Cindy.
We give to and volunteer with United Way at our community free health clinic.
We know our time and money are going to the right places.
We don't just wear the shirt.
We live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Thomas. First, Ski Patrol members were walking the picket line earlier today at Park City Mountain Resort. They want a bigger pay raise from Vail Resorts. Second, Utah is expecting rain and snow tomorrow, just in time for holiday travel. And third, the White House Christmas tree arrived today on a carriage pulled by Clydesdales. This year's tree comes from North Carolina. 45 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. I'm your co-host, Rusty Cannon, here with Greg Skordas. All right, Greg, we're going to shift gears a little bit now and talk about energy. As we know, as the Trump transition happens, as he comes into the office, there'll be a lot of talk about what happens in the energy sector. So today, Reuters News broke a story about Donald Trump's potential energy plans, and we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about what, according to this Reuters story, will be in that plan. Some of it is not a surprise.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is rolling back some of the things Biden did during his term in terms of limiting access to federal lands, in terms of limiting access to offshore drilling, in terms of just the way that we've treated electric vehicles, for example. I mean, I think that the Trump administration has, he indicated this when he was running, and there's no secret that it's probably going to occur, rolling back a little bit of that, in part to spur the economy, and in part because some of those plans just weren't working out very well.
Yeah, as an example, one, and I didn't know this until I started researching for this segment, on liquefied natural gas and exports. I didn't realize it was this year. So it was in January of 2024, as according to this article, was an election year move aimed at making gains for the party's green voting blocs. President Biden put a freeze on new liquid natural gas export permits in January to study, quote, the environmental impacts. So apparently there are some large developments going on, mostly in Louisiana, where we will have some very, very large complexes that allow for export of liquefied natural gas. I don't know if you've ever seen these ships. They're fascinating to see, where they have these big old bubbles on them that hold the liquefied natural gas, and we can export it. We can be and have been at times a net exporter of natural gas and a great resource. And so according to this report, he is going to, quote, go strong on liquefied natural gas and get these things moving so that goes forward.
What happened to those green voting blocks?
The green voting blocks didn't show up.
They didn't show up. One thing that surprised me a little bit here, Rusty, the United States is the world's top producer of natural gas. I always thought it was Russia, and I thought that after the embargo regarding the war in Ukraine, the fact that a lot of European nations are cutting back on their supplies from Russia, that was going to be a huge problem. And it did raise the prices of natural gas in a lot of European countries. But the United States is going to, it appears to be in a position to up the ante and start producing more natural gas to help that deficit out. And in fact, we are the top producer of natural gas. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and then on oil drilling, he's looking to expedite drilling permits on federal land. So keep in mind, federal land drilling is only about a quarter. I think federal land and offshore combined are only about a quarter of the production. So we're not talking about all of our production, but at least pertaining to that 25% of the market, he wants to expedite drilling permits on federal land. Apparently, they've taken quite some time under the Biden administration. I think a little over, it says, according to the article, 258 days to get a drilling permit done. That's up from about 172 days during the 4 years of the Trump presidency, according to federal data. So that's, an extra 80 days to get a permit. He's going to try to chop that down and make it a little bit more efficient to get that done, and then also just expedite more drilling on federal land and offshore, it looks like.
Yeah, and when you consider under the prior to the Biden administration, 172 days, now up to 258. It looks like the way Trump's going, especially with his governmental efficiency, that number could come down quite a bit. I think what scares people, Rusty, is this, and you'll see groups that'll publish pictures of, say, a oil well or one of those drills, in front of, right at the natural bridge, you know what I mean? Or right at the natural arch or something like that. I mean, that's not going to happen.
No.
I appreciate our federal lands, and I use the federal lands a lot. I'm very into keeping those available for our kids and my grandkids. But I also understand the need for this country to increase its energy production, at least for the time being. And maybe there's a way to do that and still be environmentally friendly. I know that people are going to climb down my throat for saying that, but I mean, maybe there's some middle ground here on a lot of those issues as it relates to energy coming out of our federal lands.
Yeah, another lightning rod issue that will likely come up. According to this article, he will follow through on threats to repeal tax credits for electric vehicles. Now that's an issue that rubs a certain governor of a state to the west of us wrong, Governor Gavin Newsom. And so there's already articles out today saying that, hey, if he does that, I will then, fund the rebates through California here for California residents. Now, putting my Taxpayers Association hat back on, and after seeing the California budget and what they do over there, knock yourself out.
Yeah,
Gavin.
California residents aren't going to be too crazy about that.
Dumbest idea.
We're
you will
that.
never be able to pay for that. And well, I shouldn't say never, but you will hamstring so many other things by trying to pay for that. Go knock yourself out. And we will continue to see mass migration out of California into places like Utah and Idaho and Arizona. Just a kind of a boneheaded idea, but I'm putting my partisan hat on here. So that would be a fun battle to watch. I'd love to see that happen, actually. Another thing that he's going to do is ask for some room here as well to declare an emergency on his first day in office so that he can, sort of bypass some barriers that Congress might have put in place, and also try to get some new funding. And I think this is important to replenish the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So if we remember over the last few years at times when energy prices have spiked, and this has always driven me nuts, whoever the president has been, where they tap that petroleum reserve to try to knock down oil prices. It lasts all of like 6 seconds,
right?
And then it pops back. Oh, well, but I did what I could. Well, yeah, but you bled down the reserve that we're supposed to have in case of a big war or some real big emergency that we have, and you're using it for political purposes, which is wrong. So he's likely going to go and try to refill that, which I think is absolutely a good thing.
What do you think about this? It seems like, and energy is not the only example of this, but you get a new administration every 4 years, maybe 8 years, and you sort of shift gears on something like this. I mean, and I guess Trump has the right, and he's got the support now with the American public to do what he's doing. But Biden did all these things to try to sort of, I'll use the word, save the planet. And now and I'm not saying that that's what would have happened, but now we're looking at, well, let's reverse these and go in a different direction. I mean, but it seems like he's got a mandate. It seems like Trump has a mandate to do some of that. I mean, and certainly there was a lot of talk in the states that are, for example, that are coal-producing states or oil-producing states, saying, wait a minute, we still got to people still have to work.
Yeah.
You can have energy or do whatever you want, but if people can't afford a house, we got to. I mean, there's got to be some compromise there.
Yeah, I think where he can gain some traction is pushing back on all the EV mandates that were put in place, whether it was state specific or nationally. All these things of, hey, by 2035. When we did work on transportation funding with taxes in recent years, it opened my eyes. I was driving around thinking, wow, there's probably a very high percentage of electric vehicles in the state. You see them around. It's literally like 1.5% of our fleet.
It is?
Oh, yeah, it is. I couldn't believe it when I saw the data. It was so small. So we were worried about road funding not keeping up with this proliferation of electric vehicles, and we're worried about raising the registration fees on them because they don't pay the gas tax. So we wanted them to pay their fair share, and this was a battle that took us 2 years to get done. But what we ended up doing is phasing those increases out over 10 years because it was at least 10 years before they even hit high single digits of a percentage of our fleet. They're not as ubiquitous as you think in comparison to gas vehicles. And so these mandates of saying, well, by 2035, do you know how soon 2035 is?
Yeah, it's getting closer every day.
It's
right.
not happening.
Right.
And I think the point that I think a lot of Americans might resonate with is, listen, we're all in favor of getting there. Everybody wants a cleaner planet, but please let me drive to my job, and let me do what I need to do in whatever vehicle I choose that works for me economically.
Right.
If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit at this point.
The percentage of EVs at the Scortis household, Rusty, is 100.
Is it?
And I'll tell you what, my wife is saying, never again. I mean, it just because, and I'm digressing a little bit, it's just hard to get from A to B if B is more than 200 miles away if you have an electric vehicle.
So what, you have all electric vehicles and you're going back?
I think we will. Next time we buy a vehicle, it won't be electric.
Interesting.
It just isn't.
Okay, that's a whole other segment.
Yeah, I know.
We got to get to that. That'll be fun.
It's not working out.
Well, it's interesting to see how this unfolds. Time will tell as we roll out of this what he does and doesn't do. But according to this article, a lot of this is coming. All right, next on Inside Sources, Google is already facing a possible breakup over its alleged monopolistic search engine. But now they could face another beating over its advertising platform. That discussion is up next. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, the Great Salt Lake will be getting a $3 million boost from the federal government. KSL News Radio's Adam Small reports that should help managers learn just how much water is actually getting to the lake.
The money will fund new stream gates, which track how much water is headed to the lake in real time, including one in the Ogden Bay Waterfowl Management Area, where Deputy Great Salt Lake Commissioner Tim Davis told me is about 10 miles closer to the lake than the next closest one.
There's a lot of water use, a lot of water that can be coming in between here in Plain City.
Davis says understanding just how much water is getting to the Great Salt Lake is one of the keys to saving it from collapse. Our top national story this hour from ABC News, the election interference and classified documents charges against President-elect Trump are being dropped. The special counsel asked the court to dismiss those cases. The Menendez brothers won't learn whether they'll be getting out of prison until next year at the earliest. A judge in Van Nuys, California today moved a hearing for Lyle and Eric Menendez from December 11th to the end of January. The brothers were convicted of killing their parents in 1989. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading today up 440 points. The NASDAQ was up 51, the S&P 500 up 18. And our KSL weather, there is a storm on the way. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
This Friday, join KSL News Radio and NPS from 10 to 1 as the movie show stops by. Then, browse and uncover what makes NPS so great. With 4 locations, NPS takes a new inventory every day. Then, they check all competitors' retail pricing before marking items down 20 to 70% off. You're invited to visit the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1. And that's the first step to discovering NPS. Visit npsstore.com to begin your own NPS adventure. npsstore.com.
Searching for the perfect holiday gift? Give the gift of dinner with Beehive Meals award-winning meals delivered right to your door. Beehive Meals, frozen, pre-made, slow cooker meals are the ultimate time saver for busy families. Whether it's for new parents, grandparents, or friends, Beehive Meals makes life easier and dinner delicious. Order today at beehivemeals.com. Beehive Meals, making the holidays warm, hearty, and stress-free.
Hi, it's Tori DeVito. In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music just like other families do over sports, camping, or other interests. And we talked. Little everyday conversations from silly to serious that built a foundation over time. honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic.
Your honesty about that part of your life gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted to uphold in my own life. And I was so grateful that you and Mom had become these sober, stable people who were always there for me.
I wanted you to know, from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now, that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, whether it's music or anything else. I said it a lot, and I'm glad you took it to heart.
Talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Dave and Debbie.
It's impossible to digest and consume all of the news that's now coming at us through either social media or through web pages or through the radio. Pick what is most impactful in your life and focus on that. And that's what Dave and I do every single morning. We pick those issues that are most important to our listeners and we boil it down so it's digestible. It's simple to understand.
I think we're trying to find the essence of the story. You know, you can't be an expert on all things, but that doesn't mean you can't be curious and really find out more and educate yourself and learn the complexities of an issue. But I think all of us start at ground zero on everything. Ask questions, show that curiosity.
And then if you need more research, you can always go to KSLNewsRadio.com and learn more.
Listen for Dave and Dejanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Had a small accident in the Taylorsville area. I-215 southbound at Redwood Road has been moved off the freeway, and crews are responding to an accident 5600 west, about 2800 south. Searching for the perfect present, give them an evening or afternoon of music by Utah Symphony at a Bravenel Hall. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Partly cloudy today, a high 47, and we're expecting a substantial storm with rain and snow overnight into tomorrow. The chance of snow continues into Wednesday. Right now, 45 degrees. It's mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
And you're back with us on KSL News Radio. I'm Greg Skordas alongside Rusty Cannon on Inside Sources today. Rusty, several months ago, a judge heard a trial, a very, very long trial, involving Google. And this was a case brought by the United States Department of Justice alleging that Google maintained an illegal monopoly in online advertising. The judge is scheduled to hear closing arguments on that case. And let me just tell you this. It's a monopoly case brought by the Department of Justice claiming Google's just too big. And the government's agenda, the government's goal here is to break it up. So the issue, first of all, for this judge is, does Google's operation constitute a monopoly? If she decides yes, it does, then the second step would be, what are we going to do about it? It's like a criminal case where you have guilt and punishment. In a monopoly case, it's the same thing. A, is there a monopoly? And B, if there is, there's almost going to be a separate trial. You know what I mean? Where the parties will say, okay, what do we do? Can we send off part of Google's enterprise? Can we take pieces of it away and have them sell that off? Google, of course, is claiming, hey, it's working. We're doing a good job. Our customers aren't complaining, and the market seems to be working. And by the way, Google doesn't have a monopoly on everything. I mean, there are other groups that are competing with Google. So I don't know how this is going to shake out. But there was a month-long trial. The judge is hearing closing arguments on it, and then we'll have a decision as to whether or not there's a monopoly, and if so, what we're going to do about it.
So I get so frustrated with stories like this because it always seems like, and maybe I'm forgetting certain instances in history, but it seems like the government is always behind the curve in trying to solve a problem that has been fixed by the market. Like, as an example, Google's defense against the monopoly claim on advertising. They are citing statistics, which I think sound realistic, where they're saying, hey, we have a declining share. It's sitting at around 25% of the market. as we think about our world now, and maybe where it was 10 years ago, where most of our online interaction or technology interaction was on our computer screen, on a page, likely with a lot of Google stuff. Think about it now, how different it is on mobile devices, on streaming, on the various entertainment platforms that everybody's using. It seems like that has been diffused into so many different areas. I get their point, and that gets back to my point of, why are you always so late in trying to figure that and then messing something up? I think of something somewhat unrelated, but last week the news about Spirit Airlines filing bankruptcy after they were denied a merger with JetBlue. Right? Oh, great. Okay, so you just wiped out the equity of an entire company because you thought it would be bad they merge. Oh, guess what? They're now operating in bankruptcy. Way to go.
Good point.
It's just this type of stuff where they just mess with it and really are just so late and not thoughtful on this. Because so then that also gets to the other thing that irritates me is the potential remedies that you talked about. Are they guilty or innocent? And then what remedies? One of the remedies that they're talking about is just saying, hey, you need to sell Chrome browser. What? How does that help to divest? I use Chrome browser all the time. I love it. It's the one that I like. I mean, I don't understand why this makes it better for me if Google has to sell it, right? I don't get it.
I didn't know what browser I used until the producer came and looked at my computer and said, yeah, you use Chrome too. So
Okay,
I don't know. It seems to be working. I don't have any problem with it. It's worked out really well. I guess the idea is if you're breaking up a company, you have to look at the individual entities within the company, and maybe you spin one away, maybe you take two away. You know what I mean? There's some that would be an easy fix. And the Department of Justice has said the way to break up the Google monopoly is to divest them of this Chrome browser, this particular part of their business, and give that to someone else because they're using that in a monopolistic way. You buy their products, you buy their services, you buy their software, you're automatically locked into this Chrome browser, I think is what the theory must be.
Well, and then as far as search engine goes, they cite problems of Google's dominance of when we go to search for something. Okay, it is public knowledge, and this is easy you can actually go on Google and find this. I'm kind of undermining my own case. But go on anywhere and search for what does Google pay Apple every year for them to have exclusivity on Apple devices that if somebody wants to do a search function, Google is the default. Meaning you can go use another
anything you want,
Google,
right?
They pay them 20 as far as in 2022. I don't have updated data for recent years, but in 2022, Google paid Apple $20 billion for that, just for that year, and that was up $2 billion from the previous year. So you're looking at a revenue rate of more than $20 billion that Apple is getting for doing nothing other than saying, hey, we'll let the default be Google.
Wow.
Why would the government need to get involved in saying, no, we think that's a bad idea? I wonder if Apple's lobbyists would then say, oh, hold on a second. Please don't cut off our $20 billion revenue stream there. We're perfectly happy with it. It's just
and your point, Rusty, is that that's sort of the market working itself out.
Yeah, it's the market.
That's sort of the way that the market is doing what it should be.
Yeah.
Because there's two different enterprises, two different entities that are not in competition, working together, not necessarily creating a monopoly, but
yeah. Well, I mean, Apple's obviously asked themselves the question of, well, do we not make them the default, or hey, how about we just take $20 billion check every year by making this the default? It sounds like a pretty good business decision, but obviously they've analyzed it more than that and decided that it's better for us to do that than to not make them the default and try to produce something ourselves, because the user experience really drives it. Meaning users are going to revolt or go elsewhere. If something isn't working well, they will adapt to it. It's just another case of the government getting into somewhere where I don't think they belong.
And you said earlier something, and I just looked it up, and you were, of course, right, as always, that Google controls only 25% of the market. That's not a monopoly.
No.
I mean, that seems to be problematic
all
by itself. But maybe Google was big back in the day, and other businesses thought, hey, we can come in and get a piece of this. The market may have worked itself out in the time it took the government to get this case to trial.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that could have very, very well been. Google's alleging in its court papers that the government's lawsuit, quote, boils down to the persistent complaints of a handful of Google's rivals and several mammoth publishers. So yeah, these things are always brought by the competition saying, hey, we're not being treated fairly in the marketplace. Government, will you come in and divest this company, break it up a little bit so that we can be more competitive. And I don't know that that's the business of the government. I can understand. I mean, I studied antitrust law in law school. That's about all I know about it. And I understand the reason for it. This one doesn't seem to be one that you and I, at least, and we're not always the same on opinions. It makes a lot of sense in terms of what the government's doing.
Yeah. So now, according to the articles that we're seeing, the most likely outcome, according to some legal experts, is that the court asked something like Google to do away with certain agreements, like the one I mentioned with Apple, and a breakup is unlikely as an outcome. But maybe the court asked Google to make it easier for users to access other search engines. But here's another point that I want to make. Okay, let's say they make it easier for people to choose. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm just using anecdotal data for my own life. If it didn't default to Google or Chrome, I'd probably choose that anyway.
Right.
You know, I don't see the point of going through all this. Just well, you better open it up, and then the same browsers or search engines get used. I just don't see the point of it.
I think the idea is that you buy the product, you're automatically lined up with that particular browser, and that creates an unfair competition for the other groups that are trying to set that up. I don't know. I mean, we'll see where that case goes. The judge is about to hear closing arguments on that. You would have thought with a case of that magnitude, they could have settled it. They could have sat down and talked about the things you and I are talking about, because I can imagine the attorney's fees on a case like this have to be in the tens of millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
When we come back after the break, President Biden is going to be in an interesting position in the next few months before he leaves office, and that is, what does he do about his son, Hunter? We'll talk about that after the break.
It's official. KSL Sports is your official radio home of the Utah Hockey Club. When the puck hits the ice this fall, you'll hear every goal, every check, and every tension-filled moment on the KSL Sports Zone. Plus, let your voice be heard on the Utah Hockey Club Fan Forum on KSLSports.com, your exclusive home of the NHL and the Utah Hockey Club in Utah is KSL Sports and 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The Advanced Window Products end-of-season sale is happening now. Your chance to get beautiful new state-of-the-art windows and save a bundle on your energy bill. Call Advanced Window Products now, and they'll give you $2,500 off on 10 windows or more. We're talking about custom frames and sealed double-pane glass, any style, any color, and they're created just for you right here in Utah. You need a doggy door inlaid into the glass? They do it all the time. In fact, Advanced Window Products has been building the highest quality windows here in Salt Lake City for 38 years. So there's no middleman and you save money. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So keep the heat inside with new windows. The energy companies will even give you a rebate. Advanced Window Products offers 0% financing, affordable monthly payments, and now $2,500 off on 10 windows or more. Call them right now, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
Join us at the Festival of Trees, a magical event benefiting the children at Intermountain Primary Children's Hospital. From December 4th to December 7th, the Mountain America Expo Center will transform into a winter wonderland of beautifully decorated trees, wreaths, and gingerbread houses, along with other fun-filled shops and activities. All funds raised help to create the nation's model health system for children. Together, we can make this holiday season a gift of love to change a child's life. Get tickets at festivalofTreesUtah.org.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, except for dinner time. Between shopping, parties, and family gatherings, who has time to cook? Beehive Meals has you covered with delicious, ready-to-cook freezer meals delivered straight to your door. The best part, all are designed to cook in your slow cooker. From hearty soups to family favorites, you'll have dinner on the table in minutes. No prep, no stress, just more time to enjoy the season. Visit beehivemeals.com today and let them take care of dinner while you savor the holidays.
Are you suffering from constant fatigue, joint pain, or digestive issues? Do you have brain fog, anxiety, or depression? Have you seen multiple doctors and still don't have any answers? Have you been told over and over that your blood tests are normal, but you're just not feeling well? At Transformative Medicine, they use specialized testing to find the root cause of the problem and then use cutting-edge therapies to treat it. Call Transformative Medicine today at 844-TALK-2-DOC and receive a free consultation. Finally, get to the root of the problem and have the answers you've been waiting for. Don't wait to get your life back. The first 25 people to call Transformative Medicine at 844-TALK-2-DOC will receive a consultation absolutely free. That's 844-TALK, the number 2, DOC. 844-TALK-2-DOC.
Cindy Olsen here for Dave's Bernina's huge Black Friday week sale at their Provo and St. George stores, featuring 1.99% up to 60 months financing on certain models. Burnett sewing machine start at only $249. Buy the Bernina B700E for only $2,999. Save $2,000. The Bernina 735 is discounted and includes thousands of dollars of free accessories while supplies last. How about a free embroidery module if you purchase a B570 QE or B770 QE Plus? Black Friday weekend doorbuster specials, $99 walking feet for the first 10 customers, incredible accessory deals, and a limited supply of Bernina 3, 4, 5, and 7 series machines. Offered at prices too low to mention. Fantastic bargains on trade-in machines and Q20 quilters. Black Friday week at Dave's Bernina, 691 East St. George Boulevard and 2017 North 550 West in Provo. Come see the Bernina 990, the most amazing revolutionary sewing machine in the world.
My name is Dale Pazinski. I volunteer with United Way to help the homeless in my community learn computer skills and build a basic resume. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the state of Utah has $3 million now to measure just how much water is coming into the Great Salt Lake. Second, the special counsel cases against President-elect Trump are being dismissed. Third, pilots for Allegiant Airlines were walking a picket line today in Provo. 45 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. I've been your co-host today, Rusty Cannon, here with Greg Skordas. Greg, it's been a fun couple of hours. We've covered a lot of ground, and on this last segment, I'm going to put you in a scenario and ask you what your decision might be. All right? So,
sounds good.
In this scenario, you are President Biden. December 12th, your son, Hunter Biden, he'll appear in federal court in Delaware, where he was convicted over some gun charges. To get sentenced, and then he's set to appear before a federal judge in Los Angeles a few days later for sentencing on tax fraud charges, which he pled guilty to. You have been on the record before the election and several days after the election saying you would not pardon your son or commute his sentence. What would you do now?
You know, the daddy in me wouldn't pardon my son. You know, you do the crime, you do the time.
Okay.
But the president, if I had that authority, if I had the ability to pardon my son, I don't know, that would be a hard thing to, because you have that right, you have that power. I mean, it's something I would hope Biden doesn't do it, but you had a different take in that you thought maybe he should, and even take it one step further.
Yeah, so this is on an earlier show a few weeks ago after the election. I was here with Taylor Morgan, and we talked about an idea that I thought was plausible. And this was just after the election. This is before the legal stuff has happened in recent days with President Trump. And I thought you could now make a case where President Biden, before he leaves, pardons his son Hunter and also pardons President Trump. One provides cover for the other, and he says enough is enough, this lawfare is over and moving on. And he sort of kind of puts a little more shine on his legacy, especially after what I believe he feels a little bit of irritation, how he was treated, taken out of the process in the election and all, sort of essentially just shown the back door. And why would he not do this? I thought at the time of, you have every reason to just say, no, I don't care what everybody thinks. I'm pardoning my son, and that gives me cover. Pardoning President Trump gives me cover to pardon Hunter. That's maybe a little less relevant now, but I think aside from that, he could now just say, listen, he wouldn't say this out loud, but the way I was treated and all of that, I am pardoning Hunter, and I'm not even going to hesitate.
Yeah, and we opened the show, Rusty, with the fact that Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, has dismissed the cases against President Trump, soon to be President Trump, but they were dismissed without prejudice. And so you're right. If Biden comes in and says, I'm going to pardon him, Now there's prejudice. You can't bring those cases up. And I'll tell you another thing. I don't know that everyone knows this. In the state system, in Utah, and many states follow the model, a person can do their crime, do their time, establish that they're clean, finish their probation, and they're eligible for something we call an expungement.
Okay.
In the state court. It's difficult to get. I do a lot of expungements because I work with the drug court people. It takes like 4 years for certain crimes, 8 for others, 10 for some. In the federal system, there's no such word as expungement. In the federal system, if you get a federal felony, and people will tell me, hey, I had a federal felony, it's been 20 years ago, how can I get it off my record? There's one way to do that. The President of the United States takes it off your record.
That's the only way.
That's the only way you can get a federal felony removed from your record.
Wow.
I mean, that's pretty difficult to do. And I've applied for presidential pardons for individuals, and they're not easy to get. I mean, there's a whole bunch of hoops you have to jump through. I also think, and I think history shows that a lame duck president starts issuing these pardons a little more than at the beginning of the term, or if they're subject to re-election or something like that. It's a little easier to do. I don't think there's much of a downside to Biden pardoning his son. You mentioned another word that I think is important to talk about, and that's the commutation.
Yeah, tell everybody what the difference is between a commutation and a pardon.
So if Hunter's about to go to jail or prison, Biden can commute the sentence. In other words, saying, look, Hunter, you're still guilty of the crime. You're still convicted, and you will live with that for the rest of your life unless Trump or somebody else pardons you. But you're not going to serve the sentence. We're going to commute it. We're going to terminate the sentence. And you can, by the way, commute a sentence at any time. So if somebody's serving 20 years and they're commuted after 10, then they did 10 years. You know what I mean? But that's a little different than a pardon, because if your sentence is commuted, let's say you're convicted of a federal felony and you're pardoned and you go apply for a job and they say you've ever been convicted of a crime, you can say no. If you get an expungement,
oh, you can answer that question. No. Okay.
Yes, because the pardoning or the expungement sort of means it didn't occur.
Yeah.
Some agencies will say even if it's expunged, tell us about it. But if your sentence is commuted and they say have you ever been convicted of a felony, the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. I just didn't do the time. You know what I mean? There's no but you know what I mean? It's a little different term. So I think Biden could commute the sentence if he doesn't do what you're talking about, and that is do the full-on pardon, but also pardon Trump, because then he could sort of face both sides with equal vigor and say, hey, look, this is what I did. This is I was good for one side. It was also good for the other. But he could commute Hunter's sentence and say, look, my kid did something bad. He's still going to have the specter of felony. And actually, he's got 2 felonies because he had the drug case and he's got the other case involving I don't remember what the other one was, but he had 2 different felonies. Oh, the tax evasion case.
Tax evasion.
So he pled to 2 felonies in 2 different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And and those could live forever unless the president decides to pardon him. Now, if either of these had been prosecuted in the state courts, I think one was in Delaware, one was in California, Biden would have no authority to do anything with that whatsoever.
So this gets to also the process, you alluded to it a little bit, about the end of a term as president. We've all been irritated in past by a president. You know, he pardoned who on the way out, and you get quite irritated.
Right.
This is not new precedent. I remember President Clinton when he left and him pardoning Mark Rich at the time. That drove me absolutely nuts. And then likewise, Trump pardoned several people right at the end, or at least through his term, and especially towards the end. I didn't remember this until the article that I read. And the reason we're talking about this is an article on Politico today where this author's making a pretty strong case in his opinion that this should happen. That President Trump actually pardoned his Jared Kushner's father. I forgot about that. Of some crimes, as well as some others, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, and all of those. This happens, right? And I'm trying to give some context to where this would not be new ground if he does something like this. Now, the one thing that surprised me is that even after the election, this was just a few days, there was a report where somebody asked in the White House press briefing room to his spokesperson, he changed his mind, because this was after the election results, and her answer was an unequivocal no. He has not changed his mind. So he'd be going back on his word a couple of times here, but the point that I wanted to make is I would not be surprised if this happens. In fact, I will be surprised if it does not. That's just my opinion.
The pardoning of Trump?
The pardoning of his son.
Oh, of his son, yes.
Yeah. I'm not so sure on Trump at this point because of the erosion of these cases, but again, I think that gives him cover to pardon his son.
I think because of the erosion of the cases, it gives him more cover to pardon Trump.
Really?
And because when he's leaving the room, Jack Smith says without prejudice.
Yeah.
That means I can still file this again, or my successor can still file this again, and people are going to be wondering about that.
Yeah.
Biden would serve everyone, the entire country, well to say we're done with these Trump cases. We are done. He's pardoned. Then, no matter who the next administration is, no matter who the next attorney general is, no matter whoever assumes any office in the future, those cases are done, and we don't have to talk about them anymore.
Yeah.
Because when Jack Smith says, we're dismissing without prejudice, what does that do? What does that tell us? In 4 years, another Justice Department might come in and say, hey, I think we need to pick up the ball on these. So, yeah, I agree with you. That would serve well. I know we're talking about Hunter Biden. My guess is President Biden will pardon his son on his way out the door.
Okay, so you wouldn't be surprised if this happens as well?
No, I would be surprised if it didn't.
Yeah, so because there's the two charges, gun-related charge, which, and we've talked about this before on the air, where you thought this wouldn't have been brought against somebody if it wasn't Hunter Biden.
Right.
And I can understand that. The tax evasion one, it was like $1.5 million. Like that was significant, right? And he could face several years in prison for that. But I think it'll be interesting to see this play out. You wonder what family dynamics come into play, what political dynamics come into play, but it's one of those things that will be interesting to watch. Sounds like neither of us will be surprised if that's what happens come as we get close to January 20th.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people felt like Hunter was prosecuted for reasons that others wouldn't have been. So we'll see.
All right, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Greg. Thank you for joining us on Inside Sources. Up next, Jeff Kaplan.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. We're at 45 degrees, a cloudy sky. KSL's top story is breaking news this afternoon. A judge has ruled a San Jose State volleyball player can play in the Mountain West tournament. But the student athletes and coach who sued say they're already planning an appeal.
A federal judge in Denver ruled that the, quote, alleged transgender player could compete in the Mountain West Conference women's tournament that's happening this week in Vegas. Multiple players, including one from USU and a coach, had sued, saying it was unfair and a risk to their safety to play the San Jose State volleyball player. Last month, the commissioner of the Mountain West Conference told KSL that the San Jose State player meets the eligibility standards. The player has never publicly come out as transgender, and San Jose has not confirmed her gender identity. Jessica Lowell, KSL News Radio.
And we've reached out to the USU Athletics Department for a statement on the ruling and whether USU will forfeit if they play San Jose State in the tournament. KSL News Time 3:01. Dozens of Allegiant Airlines pilots were picketing outside of Provo Airport this morning. If you're planning on flying Allegiant this week, don't worry. Those pilots assure customers they'll get you where you need to go. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera joining us live. He has the details. Eric?
Jeff, representative for Allegiant Teamsters, Captain Daniel Morgan, says that they will strike if the airline doesn't resolve their issues with compensation and benefits.
We're the only airline that does not have long-term disability until age 65, and we are also the only airline that does not have industry standard 401k retirement benefits as well.
On one of the busiest travel weeks of the year, around 24 Allegiant Air pilots staged a picket line outside of Provo Airport. Allegiant Air responded by email stating they've offered pilots a 50% increase in hourly wages. However, Morgan says that still leaves them about 20% behind their industry peers. Reporting live, Eric Cabrera, KSL News Radio.
Utah's mountains are about to get blasted by snow. Expect a foot or two of fresh powder Wednesday night. Some mountain ranges will get close to 3 feet. KSL meteorologist Devin Mishuli is telling us in the valley it's going to be heavy rain Wednesday evening. Wednesday, of course, being one of the biggest travel days of the year, so you'd better listen to KSL for the latest triple team traffic if you're going to be heading out for the holiday this week. The special counsel has dropped 2 federal criminal cases against the president-elect. Maria Chaleos is live at the KSL National News Desk.
Jeff, citing Department of Justice policy that protects sitting presidents against prosecution, Special Counsel Jack Smith is dropping the election interference and classified documents cases against Mr. Trump.
Ultimately, Donald Trump won. He won the election. So that massive jury of